My name is Crystal, and I feel like I don't have anyone in this world, so I'm sharing my story here. I've watched my husband become someone I don't recognize, a monster. I don't know how many of you have happy love stories, but I envy those who married their soulmates and are now living their best lives. I thought I was marrying my soulmate, Seth, but I was wrong. I married Seth out of love. We both had stable jobs and a good relationship before we got married. However, after we tied the knot, Seth suddenly quit his job without even talking to me about it first. He said, "Look, Crystal, I was getting depressed and burnt out at my last job, so I needed to quit. I'll apply for a new job soon, but I need a break. You'll have to support us until then." I replied, "I'm sorry you're feeling down, Seth, but you should have consulted me or told me that you were going to quit. I needed a heads up." He brushed it off, saying, "It's not a big deal, Crystal. It's just for a few months. After that, things will go back to normal." But things never went back to normal. I had to take on 2 jobs to support us, while Seth just sat around playing games all day. He didn't even help around the house. Even after months went by, things only got worse. I don't have a college degree, so I couldn't get high-paying jobs. We barely managed to get by, but after a few months, we couldn't even afford the rent. That's when we had to ask for help from Seth's parents, Cole and Olivia. They were shocked to find out Seth had quit his job. They said, "Seth, what is wrong with you? You're going back to your old habits again. This is unacceptable." I asked, "What do you mean?" Seth is a hard-working man, and I always knew him that way. This situation is unexpected. He hasn't been doing well mentally. They replied, "You don't know everything, Crystal. Seth has done this multiple times. He quits his jobs and then expects us to take care of him. Last time, we threatened to cut him off if he didn't get a job. We forced him to go back to work, and after that he met you. We thought he had genuinely changed, but now we see he is back to his old ways. He says he is depressed, and he visited many therapists, but they all said there was nothing wrong with him. He was just playing us for free money." I was shocked to hear this about Seth. Believe me, during the 2 years we were in a relationship, Seth was a consistent worker. He never did anything like this. It only happened after the wedding. I had no idea this was a pattern. Seth tried to defend himself, saying, "Dad, you saw that I changed my ways. This is really an exceptional situation. We just need a little help for now. I'll find a job soon." His parents told him, "You better stick to your word, Seth. We won't let you mooch off your wife. She's a good person and deserves happiness. We will let you stay at one of our properties for free, but you have to promise to get a job soon. We will kick you out if you continue this behavior." I'd assured them, "Thank you so much. Seth will work on his problems. Thank you for helping us until then." Seth also promised his parents that he would find a job, but he never did. Instead, he lied to them about having a job, while I was the one working hard to support our family. I kept quiet because I loved him and didn't want to pressure him. Slowly, our finances got worse. I was barely making ends meet, while Seth continued to waste time. In fact, he got angry with me when I couldn't bring in more money each month. He even warned me not to take days off to avoid missing a day's wage. I was exhausted and isolated from everyone. Seth hated it when I went out with friends. I was foolish and too in love to see the truth, so I stayed like this for a year. Yes, for an entire year. I worked like a slave and reduced myself to nothing. One day, I had enough and took a day off from both my jobs. When Seth saw that I didn't go to work, he said, "Why are you home, Crystal? You should be at work making money." I took the day off and said to Seth, "If I keep working like this, I'll die, Seth. This is unacceptable." He replied angrily, "Who told you that you can take a break? I warned you about this, Crystal, and you didn't listen." I shot back, "How can you be so cruel, Seth? For a whole year, I worked like a slave while you enjoyed my money. You isolated me from my friends because you didn't want me going out and spending money. This is hell, Seth. I deserve a day off and I will go out. You'll have to deal with it." I ran out of the house crying because I was hurt and needed to get away from him. I walked around the city and did some window shopping, but I didn't have much money to buy anything. Over the past year, I lost most of the money I had saved, and it was all because of Seth. I was truly getting frustrated with him. He had stopped showing me any affection a long time ago. Now, all he did was yell at me about wasting time or not bringing in enough money. I really didn't know what to do. After being out for most of the day, I returned home in the evening. I walked up to the house and tried to unlock the door with my key. The lock turned, but the door wouldn't open. I realized it was bolted from the inside. I was confused, so I knocked on the door. I knew Seth was home, but he didn't answer. After a while, I started shouting, "Seth, open the door. I'm outside and it's freezing. I'm going to catch a cold." Seth replied, "I'm not going to open the door." I was shocked. "Are you joking, Seth? This isn't funny. Open the door." He continued, "You think you can disrespect me and ignore my warnings? That will never happen, Crystal. You need to learn a lesson. I'm not going to let you into the house today. You can stay outside or go wherever you came from." "What are you talking about, Seth? Are you locking me out because I took a day off from work? This is ridiculous, Seth. Let me in." "Knock all you want, Crystal. I'm not letting you in. Consider this a lesson for you. I don't want you to ever behave this way again," Seth said, then started ignoring me completely. He didn't open the door and stopped responding to my calls. I kept pounding on the door and calling him, but he wouldn't answer. I was starting to freeze and didn't know what to do. Like a fool, I decided to wait a little longer, hoping his anger would disappear. I thought Seth wouldn't be so cruel as to actually lock me out of the house, but I was wrong. I sat there for 2 hours before I realized how abusive my husband had become. At that point, I felt completely alone. Seth had isolated me from my friends, and I didn't have any family in this state. I didn't know where to take shelter for the night. The cold was creeping in, and I started shaking from the chills. After thinking for a while, I decided to seek help from the only 2 people I knew well enough. I got into my car and drove straight to my in-laws' house. They were my only hope in this horrible situation. I knew they were good people and would help me out. I raced to their house and knocked on their door. Cole opened the door and was surprised to see me. After letting me in, he asked, "Hey, Crystal, what's the matter? Why are you crying? Oh my God, you poor thing, what's wrong? Is Seth okay? Why did you come alone?" "Seth locked me out of the house, guys. I was sitting outside for 2 hours before I drove here." "What the hell, Crystal? Why did he lock you out? What kind of prank is this? Don't tell me he's getting influenced by all those videos he watches." "No, Cole, he wasn't pranking me. He locked me out because I took a day off work. He doesn't like it when I take a break. I've been working 2 jobs to support us and I was feeling burnt out, so I went window shopping for a day. It's not like I can buy anything. I don't have money." Cole was shocked. "What in the world, Crystal? Why are you working 2 jobs? Seth has been telling us that he's earning enough for both of you. He even said he's asking you to leave your job and take a break. He's been lying to you guys. He never got a job after he left his last one. I don't think he ever sent any applications. He's been pestering me for money, so I had to take up 2 jobs. He gets upset when I take a day off because it means I'll get less money next month." I started to cry and poured my heart out to his parents. I knew he had been keeping them in the dark. I had supported his lies because I didn't want them to disown him. I loved a man who didn't even care about me. My pain and shame became too much for me to handle, so I broke down. His parents were horrified to know that their son had become abusive toward me. They were even angrier than I was. Cole started cursing out loud while Olivia quietly patted my back. When I was done crying, Cole said, "Crystal, don't worry. You are not alone. We are going to get you out of this situation. I can't believe our son has turned into a monster. I wonder where we went wrong with him. This is horrible. Crystal, please don't cry. We will figure out something, I promise." "I don't know what to do, guys," I said. "Truth be told, I don't even want to be in the same house as him. I don't know what to do or where to go." "Don't worry about those things, Crystal," Cole replied. "We'll take care of it. Let's go back to the house. I will go with you. It's time we taught Seth a lesson he'll remember." Cole took me to our house while Olivia stayed behind, as she was sure she would slap Seth if she saw him. When Cole and I got there, we knocked on the door, but Seth didn't open it. I heard him scream that he wasn't letting me in. I said, "Seth, open the door. It's been 3 hours already. How much longer are you going to punish me?" "As long as I want, Crystal. You didn't listen to me when I told you not to take a break. Now I'm not going to listen to you. See what it feels like." "You are insane, Seth. I was taking a break for 1 day. 1 freaking day. That doesn't mean I deserve to spend so many hours outside. You deserve to spend the night outside since you were so desperate for a break. You can stay out and take as much time as you need. I am not opening the door. You can keep knocking. Seth, open the damn door right now, Cole yelled. Open it or God help me, I will break this door down. After Cole called out to him, there was immediate silence. Seth knew he had messed up. He opened the door once he heard his father's voice. He immediately panicked and ran to get the door. When he saw us, he got even more nervous. His dad looked very serious, with a mean frown on his face. Seth nervously said, "Hey Dad, what brought you here? You didn't say you would stop by." "Drop the chit-chat, Seth. Tell me, who the hell are you to lock my daughter-in-law out of the house? Did you forget the fact that I own the place you live in?" "Dad, it's not like that," Seth said. "I was just pranking Crystal. It's not what you think it is. We were just joking around, right, Crystal?" "It is exactly what you think, Cole," I replied. "Seth kicked me out of the house because I took a day off work. He has been working me to the bone while spending my money and sitting around at home." "Seth, why the hell is Crystal telling me you left your job without even consulting with her? I let you stay here on the condition that you would work on yourself for your family. Then why am I hearing this about you?" At this point, Seth knew we had him in a corner. His lies were unraveling, and he had nowhere to hide. I would never have told people about my useless husband if it weren't for my pride. But he underestimated the power of a woman who has been abused for too long. I wasn't going to sit idle and take his abuse anymore. I was going to ruin him. Still, Seth tried his best to save himself. He said, "Dad, it's not like that. I swear I'm looking for jobs. It's just taking time. You know how bad the job market is right now. I've sent so many applications, but I haven't heard back from them yet." "Oh really, Seth? Well, why don't you show me all the job applications you have sent? Then we will decide if you are telling the truth." "Why do you need to see proof? Don't you believe your own child? This is ridiculous." "I don't need to show you any kind of proof. I'm telling you that I have sent numerous applications." No, Seth hadn't sent any applications. I knew that very well. He never tried to get another job after quitting his last one. He just planned to sit around and spend my money. Even Cole could understand that his son was up to no good. There was no way that Seth was telling the truth since he wasn't going to say anything. I said, "He hasn't sent out any applications, Cole. That's why he isn't showing you the proof." A position opened up at my office, and I told him to apply. He didn't and instead screamed at me, saying, "How dare you tell me what to do? Seth, your mother and I allowed you to stay here so you could turn your life around. You fooled us into thinking you got a job and were contributing to your family. Now I see you're making Crystal work for the two of you while you do nothing but spend her money. Since you haven't held up your end of the bargain, I'm going to evict you from this house." "What? Dad, no. Please don't do that. Where will we go? You can't just kick us out like that. Crystal, look what you've gotten us into now. We'll both lose the roof over our heads." "There is no point shouting at her, Seth. Crystal will come to stay with us, or in this house. You are the one getting kicked out. You don't have to worry about where Crystal will stay." "This is unfair. Crystal and I are a couple, so you can't separate us. You can't separate a married couple, for God's sake. I go where my wife goes, and that's final. If Crystal wants to stay married to me, she has to take me where she goes." "Yeah, well, in that case, I won't stay married to you anymore." "I made that decision a while back, Seth. There is no way I'm going to continue this marriage. I will be divorcing you." Seth was dumbstruck by what I said. He didn't expect 2 blows in one night alone. All his life, he used the people around him to fund his expenses to some extent. For the last year, he managed to throw all his responsibilities on others. He expected life to continue like that. However, that was not going to happen. His parents and I were going to stand up for ourselves. Seth understood that he had just nuked his life at that point. He suddenly changed his demeanor. He cried and begged me not to leave him. He said, "Crystal, don't do this. You can't be serious. You're throwing away so many years of our relationship for a small mistake. Look, I know I shouldn't have locked you out, but it was just one day. We can work this out." "No, it wasn't just one day, Seth. You have been financially abusing me for the past year. You drained my savings and left me with nothing. You didn't even help me with house chores and complained when I asked. 1 year of this torture is enough, Seth. Not anymore. I am leaving." Crystal, you're being unreasonable. We can talk this out. Fine, I will start applying for jobs tomorrow. I'm sure I'll find something soon. Once I get a job, we can go to therapy and fix this, right? I know you well enough to know that you will not do any of that. I suggested all of those things last year. You ignored me and called me names every time. I know that if I listen to you now, you'll act like you've changed, but then you'll go back to how things are now. Dad, please help me convince Crystal. See, I'm willing to change, but she's not listening to me at all. Who's at fault here, Seth? Crystal is doing the right thing by divorcing you. You don't have the right to hold her back. Her logic is completely on point. She's a good girl, and I don't want her to waste her life with an abusive man like you anymore. Crystal, you can come over to our place and stay there until Seth is kicked out. I'll wait here while you pack your bags. I took the chance and went straight to my room to get my stuff. As promised, Cole waited for me downstairs while Seth tried to make him change his mind. To be honest, I didn't trust Seth anymore, and staying with him in this house after the confrontation would be too risky. So I took Cole's offer to stay with them. I could hear Seth shouting and crying downstairs. Cole remained passive to everything and waited quietly for me. I got my stuff and went downstairs. Seth tried to physically block me with his body. That's when Cole shouted at him about calling the police. Seth got scared and let me go. Back at my in-laws' place, Olivia took one look at us and immediately went to hug me. For some reason, her tender move brought me back to tears. It had been ages since someone held me like that or showed me any bit of affection. It made me realize how much I lost by marrying Seth. His own parents loved me more than he did. Olivia brought me into the house and assured me I could stay with them as long as I wanted, so I decided to stay there for the time being. I didn't file for divorce straight away. Why? Because I needed Seth to get back on his feet to avoid paying him alimony. Seth would be forced to find work once the month was up, and he would have to move. Until then, he could enjoy half of whatever I had in our joint account. I transferred half of the funds into my account and left him with the rest. I promised myself not to send any funds into that account again. Seth tried his best to convince me to return to him. He showed up at his parents' place multiple times to get us to forgive him. We didn't, of course. In fact, this time, his mother verbally attacked him for being such a deadbeat. She even called him a poor excuse for a man. Seth was crying and begging for forgiveness. It was truly glorious. The month passed and Seth was forced to move out of the house. He tried to fight the move, which led to his parents almost calling the cops. I guess Seth was finding it hard to believe his parents were actually kicking him out. Anyway, since then, he has been couch surfing with his friends, but had to get a job, of course. I mean, who would host him for free day after day? Everyone knew about his bad habits of becoming a parasite on others. Seth couldn't find a good job, but he made do. As soon as he moved into a place, I filed for divorce. The process was easy because Seth didn't have any money for a lawyer. He resigned himself to his fate and let us get divorced. I didn't have to pay him any alimony because our income difference wasn't much. I left one of my jobs because I no longer needed to support another person. Plus, his parents were hosting me for free, which let me rebuild my savings. Anyway, we split amicably because we didn't have the means to fight. He apologized to me multiple times, but I didn't forgive him. I'm now living in a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate. Things are picking up for me. I visit Olivia and Cole since they have become my family as well. They are also refusing to forgive Seth, and it doesn't look like their relationship will ever go back to normal.
The maternity ward was cozy, like basking in the sun. Emily, cuddling her baby, must have been super happy. Want to hold her? Emily asked John, who seemed a bit nervous. John scratched his head, feeling awkward. I might drop her. Maybe later. Emily glanced at me, seeming proud as she focused on her baby. It was like she was trying to show off compared to me, someone without kids. I wish I had a kid, John muttered cheerfully, looking at Emily. Trying not to laugh, I replied seriously, "Well, isn't there one right in front of you?" John and Emily looked confused until someone walked in and handed them something that made their faces go pale. I'm Sarah, 29 years old. My husband John is turning 32, and we're celebrating our 5th year of marriage. We both work at the same company, but in different departments. We met at work and fell in love. John, a successful salesperson, was quite popular among the female employees for his charm and sales skills. Before we got to know each other, I used to admire him from afar whenever we crossed paths in the hallway. Our first real interaction happened by chance when he helped me pick up some documents I dropped. Sorry, thank you so much. No, it was my fault for bumping into you. No, not at all. I was just spacing out. No, it was me. We couldn't help but find the situation amusing as we exchanged nods back and forth. As we picked up the documents, we shared a laugh and locked eyes. After that, we started chatting whenever we met in the hallway and occasionally went out for drinks or dinner. John's stories about his sales experiences were fascinating, and I understood why he excelled in his job. When we decided to tie the knot, some of my female colleagues were surprised. I left my job when we got married and became a homemaker, but circumstances led me back to work 2 years ago, though at a different company from John's. Since then, we've been working hard together. Although we still have a mortgage, we've managed to buy our own condo and save a bit. Our relationship may not be as romantic as when we first got married, but I believe we're doing well. Sometimes John comes home late, but when he's early, he pitches in with household chores, saying, "You're working too, Sarah. It's only fair." My friends envy me, saying, "You've got yourself a great husband." But we do have our share of problems, the biggest being our struggle to have children. We both adore kids and have dreamed of starting a family since we got married. Yet after 5 years, we're still childless. With my age creeping up, I'm starting to consider fertility treatment seriously. Surprisingly, John seems more relaxed about it lately. A few months ago, he was enthusiastic about starting a family together, but lately he seems less interested. He stopped bringing up the topic of children altogether. "Don't you want kids anymore?" I asked him one day. John looked surprised. "Why would you think that?" he replied. Feeling a bit frustrated, I said, "Because you haven't mentioned it lately." John gave me a gentle smile. "That's not true, Sarah. I do want to have children with you, but I don't want to pressure you," he explained, hugging me comfortingly. Another concern is the strained relationship between John and my dad. My mom assures me they'll warm up to each other eventually. But whenever John is around my dad, he seems tense. It makes me wonder if he'll ever really get along. It's understandable though, considering my dad is the executive vice president of John's company. When John first came to my house to meet my parents, he was so nervous he could hardly speak. My dad even teased him, "You're one of my salesmen, right?" I got defensive, saying, "John is the best salesman." My dad laughed it off, assuring John it was just a joke, which finally made John smile. Sometimes I worry that John faces challenges at work because his father-in-law knows everything he does. When I bring up my concerns, John brushes them off. "It's not so bad when you're the son-in-law of the executive VP. Even the bosses treat you differently," he says. "I'm not taking advantage of it, but they're just more understanding," he adds. "But doesn't that make work tougher for you?" I ask. "Nope," he replies, laughing, seemingly unfazed by the situation. The truth is, there's another reason for the tension between John and my dad. 2 years ago, John had a financial mishap unrelated to work, and my dad helped him out. It was a big deal, and it's why I went back to work. I think John feels guilty about it, even though my dad never brings it up. I can see John wants to make my dad proud, not just as a salesman, but as his son-in-law too. Since we don't have kids, we often go on dates on our days off. One day, after watching a movie, we ran into one of John's coworkers while strolling around town looking for a place to eat. "Was surprised to see you here," Emily exclaimed, spotting us first. This is one of my coworkers. They also got married after we did, from an office romance, John explained. Emily, who was noticeably pregnant, mentioned she was about to start maternity leave. "Thanks for always looking out for my husband," Emily said, her expression twitching slightly. "Oh, it's nothing really," I replied, trying to keep it light, but I sensed some tension. It felt like she wasn't entirely friendly towards me. "Hey, that's not nice, Emily," her husband scolded her. "Sorry about that. We really appreciate your support," he said. He seemed younger than me, but easygoing and friendly. He probably excelled in sales with his calm demeanor. It seemed Emily got along well with John, even touching his arm in front of me, his wife. Her husband, Tom, watched her with a mix of surprise and irritation. "What are you two up to?" Her gaze towards me felt challenging. John sensed my discomfort and quickly intervened to ease the tension. Maybe Tom harbored suspicions about John and Emily's relationship, just like I did. Honestly, I didn't have the best impression of Emily, but I was starting to see Tom in a different light. Once doubts creep in, they're hard to shake. While I didn't think Emily, visibly pregnant, would go to a hotel with John, the possibility of infidelity crossed my mind. Deciding to take action rather than dwell on it, I hired a detective and purchased hidden cameras. I installed them in key areas of the house while the detective monitored John's activities outside. If he was cheating, we'd find out. If not, things would return to normal. I often unwind with long baths, finding solace in the warm water. Soaking for at least an hour is my way of rejuvenating. If John was cheating, this would be an opportune time for him. With my smartphone in hand, I checked on John's activities while soaking. Most days, he seemed to be watching TV or working, but occasionally he appeared to be communicating with someone. The motion detecting cameras ensured I wouldn't miss anything, even when I wasn't actively watching. I meticulously reviewed the recordings and audio, and to put it bluntly, my trust in John was shattered. To compound matters, I discovered that John was the father of Emily's baby. While watching the footage, I couldn't help but gasp in disbelief. John was on the phone with Emily, inquiring, "Is our baby all right?" Though I couldn't hear her response, his serious tone indicated he wasn't joking when he replied, "That's wonderful news." During one of John's bath times, I checked his phone and was stunned by the messages exchanged between him and Emily. "Are you okay?" "No suspicions." "Don't worry, he doesn't even know he's infertile." It was a devastating blow to his pride as a man. It felt too heartbreaking to confront him with the truth. Reading their conversation left me feeling unsettled. I couldn't help but wonder if Emily cheated because her husband, Tom, was sterile, or if John justified his infidelity because I wasn't getting pregnant. I scrolled through their exchanges, taking screenshots with my smartphone as evidence. Additionally, I retrieved Tom's contact details from John's phone. Wouldn't anyone in my shoes feel the same desire for revenge upon discovering this betrayal? They say misery loves company, and I made sure to gather ample evidence before reaching out to Tom, just in case he doubted Emily's infidelity or decided to take her side and thwart my plans. I arranged to meet Tom at the cafe without informing Emily or John. To avoid raising suspicion, I called ahead and informed him about Emily and John's affair. He didn't appear overly shocked or distressed when he arrived. When I thanked him for coming, he simply nodded. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you, Sarah, about something," he said. Curious, I inquired, but Tom insisted on hearing my side first. He explained that revealing John's betrayal would be a betrayal in itself, and he needed a compelling reason to do so. I presented Tom with the evidence gathered by the detective and the proof I had collected. As he examined the images discussing sterility, his expression twisted in disbelief. "Emily seems certain about this here. Do you know anything about it?" I shared that we'd been married for 3 years and underwent testing about a year into our marriage. Tom and Emily had been eager to start a family early on, so he found it strange that they hadn't succeeded after a year. After the testing, I never actually saw the results myself. Emily assured me everything was fine on her end, he explained. Listening to his side, I realized the depth of the deception. I pondered why Emily didn't divorce Tom, knowing he couldn't have children. "Oh, that's because Emily is in debt," Tom explained. Apparently, Emily's desire to flaunt her lifestyle led her to rack up debts buying designer bags and clothes she couldn't afford on her salary. Now they were working together to pay off the debt, with the condition that Emily would curb her extravagant spending. Remembering Emily's behavior last time I saw her, her need for attention and luxury made sense. She probably felt threatened by John's attention to me and maybe wanted to make Tom jealous too. "Debt, huh? Sounds like a perfect match for John," I blurted out, earning a puzzled look from Tom. In gratitude for his honesty, I decided to share something about John from 2 years ago. "Interesting," Tom remarked with a smirk, clearly thinking along the same lines as me. "I'm considering a divorce," I confessed. "Me too. It's comforting to know you're thinking the same," Tom replied. Then he revealed something he had been holding back. "Was your first encounter with John really accidental?" he asked. I nodded. "Yes. I dropped my documents and John helped me pick them up." "It wasn't an accident," Tom interjected. "What? He did it on purpose to create an opportunity?" According to Tom, John had noticed my interest in him for a while. Tom was convinced that given the opportunity, John could get close to me. As I felt my cheeks flush with embarrassment at my own obviousness, Tom continued. If his interest had solely been in you, Sarah, it would have been one thing, but that wasn't the case. How so? I inquired. Because of who you are, the executive's daughter. John seemed quite pleased when he boasted to Tom about getting close to the executive director's daughter, meaning me. He seemed to view marrying me as a shortcut to advancing his career. It all makes sense now. That's why he was so mindful of my father and got so jittery when he met us, I realized. He even went around at work telling people he could easily talk to my father-in-law, the executive director. John bragged. I hadn't known about this since I'd left the company. John had brushed it off, claiming people were just being considerate on their own. But that's not the case. He married me to exploit me, to use my father's position as a threat. Yet he turns into a nervous wreck in front of my dad. It's pathetic, I confided in Tom. Can you get tested again? I'll do the same, I suggested. As for John and Emily, I had no intention of forgiving either of them. John had been antsy and excited for days leading up to the celebration of the birth. What should we get for the celebration? It's a boy. He'd exclaim happily, selecting gifts. The maternity ward greeted us with warmth and sunlight upon our arrival. Emily and Tom warmly welcomed us, and when John presented the clothes he had chosen, Emily's face lit up with joy. Tom excused himself to fetch drinks. With John attentively watching, Emily held the baby, radiating happiness. Would you like to hold him? John asked me with a smile, surrounded by our colleagues. John hesitated, scratching his head. Nah, he mumbled, glancing at me. Sensing my lack of enthusiasm, he quickly composed himself. I'm afraid I might drop him. Maybe later, he added sheepishly. Emily glanced at me, then chuckled, focusing back on the baby. It was evident she was subtly competing with me, knowing I didn't have children. I'd love to have a kid of my own, John remarked cheerfully, his gaze fixed on Emily. I almost laughed out loud at his comment but managed to maintain a serious expression. Well, isn't there one right in front of you? I quipped, trying to sound casual. Both John and Emily looked at me with confusion just as the door to the ward swung open abruptly. Tom entered with a couple of bottles of water, apologizing for the delay as he handed them out, slipping a folded piece of paper to Emily. Emily's expression shifted from confusion to shock as she unfolded the paper, revealing a divorce notice. What is this, some kind of joke? She exclaimed in disbelief. John, equally stunned, glanced at the document in her hand. Come on, Tom, this isn't the time for jokes. It's in poor taste, John remarked, his tone flat. It's no joke, Tom replied firmly. Emily's confusion turned to pale confusion, while John moved to confront Tom. I stepped in front of John and handed him my own set of divorce papers already unfolded. I'm not joking either, I declared. Moving to Emily's bedside, I laid out photos showing John visiting her house frequently during her maternity leave. What were you doing at my house when my husband wasn't home? I demanded. John, attempting to explain, claimed he was merely being considerate, checking in on Emily since they started at the company together. Yeah, John was just being thoughtful, Emily chimed in defensively. Their attempts to justify themselves seemed almost comical, as if they could talk their way out of the situation. It was absurd, especially considering their late-night communications. Was that concern for Emily or for the child in her belly, perhaps your own? I challenged John, sensing his anger rising. Stop it, Sarah. Emily is my colleague, and it's natural for her to be anxious about her first child. John retorted, his tone sharp. You're just jealous of me, aren't you? Just because you can't have kids, Emily interjected defensively, her words dripping with venom. I couldn't help but snort at her accusation, which only seemed to fuel her anger as she glared at me, her face flushed with frustration. Don't listen to her, Tom. This child is truly yours, Emily insisted, attempting to divert attention from the conversation. But Tom's mocking laugh coincided with me showing Emily the incriminating evidence on my smartphone. A recording of John joking about his own infertility, followed by a video of him inquiring about the well-being of our child. See, should we check who you were really talking to? I challenged as Emily's bravado faltered in the face of undeniable proof. We're just coworkers, joking around, Emily stammered, trying to regain her composure. I glanced down at her with pity as she met my gaze defiantly. Hold on to him properly, Emily. He's a precious life, I advised gently as the baby stirred in her arms, almost falling. The sudden cry of the baby pierced the tense atmosphere. "Shut up," Emily snapped just as Tom unfolded a piece of paper. "I can't have kids, Emily. You know that." Tom's voice was calm but laced with bitterness as he addressed his wife, who froze under his gaze. "Let's get a divorce," we both declared to our partners, the finality of the decision hanging heavily in the air. John, still attempting to salvage the situation, pointed a finger at me. "This is all because of your infertility, Sarah. There must be something wrong with you, just like with Tom," he accused. I felt a surge of anger rise within me. "It's not me, it's you, John. And don't you dare speak to me with such arrogance, especially when we're on the brink of divorce," I retorted, tossing the test results in his direction. The paper briefly stuck to his face before fluttering to the ground. "Who do you think you are, speaking to me like that? Did you believe blaming me would absolve you of your actions?" I demanded, spelling it out for him once more. "Divorce. Do you even comprehend the gravity of that word?" John's face drained of color as he stammered an apology, begging for forgiveness. "Huh." Emily's astonished voice interjected as John pleaded. Tom and I exchanged a knowing glance and chuckled softly, reflecting on John's past mistake of accumulating a hefty debt through stock trading, which my father had covered. I had started working to repay it. My father's assistance came with a condition. John signed a promissory note. In addition to alimony, John would now face relentless pursuit for repayment from my father. With Emily's debt added to the mix, their future looked bleak. "Well, best of luck to you both. You'll need it. We'll settle the rest through our lawyers," I declared, leaving John on the floor in tears as Tom and I exited the hospital room. My father, even angrier than me, enlisted the help of a lawyer he trusted to extract every cent from John, even tapping into John's share of our joint assets. But it still wasn't enough. John, now remarried to Emily but unaware of each other's financial burdens, faced criticism from Emily's parents upon discovering the truth, leading to yet another divorce. Emily's parents, while temporarily covering her debts, eventually had to send her back home, where she endured daily reproach. Despite the hardships, their grandchild, the innocent babe, was showered with love and lacked for nothing, which eased my concerns. John, unable to remain at the company, resigned and now resides in a modest apartment, toiling from dawn till dusk to meet his obligations of debt, alimony, and child support. Meanwhile, I've settled into a rented apartment, embracing solitary living. Tom and I have become drinking buddies, meeting up on weekends for quiet moments of camaraderie. He may not be as chatty as John, but I appreciate the peaceful